I just get so excited, and I want to press record the moment that we start, especially to catch all the good, tasty banter. You know,
Tasty banter.
it's so yummy.
It is. It is. It is. It is. Yeah. If we could record the tasty banter and put it's so yummy and put it in a cake, it would be the why did the United States men's national team get a red card cake? Oh.
There's a joke in my head about banter cake and bunt cake, but it's too early right now in Australia for me to make that joke in a funny way. But the idea is there.
Oh, okay. Well, I have been getting absolute horrible sleep as of late. So you're early
Oh
morning
no.
tired. I'm no sleep tired. I think your banter bunt cake works just perfectly.
It was. I thought I was offering it up as a gift to our listeners in case they wanted to try to improve upon it. But I guess it stands on its own two legs.
A
As
banter bunt
is
cake. It works. It
banter
just
bunt
sounds right. Banter bunt cake.
banter bunt cake. Yes,
Banter
it'd be the
bunt
best
cake.
kind of cake indeed. For anybody who can hear that tippy tapping in the background, that is my dog Newton, who has just ran into the room holding his soon-to-be headless pirate chicken toy that he only got like a week ago and has basically disemboweled.
Way to go, Newton. My dog has a series of legless chew toy animals.
Legless.
They didn't start legless. Through much love, they became legless.
Oh.
Yeah.
I keep being visually distracted by I have our chat conversation up here in the background, and I keep seeing that GIF of the planetary collision, and it's just like on repeat, it's just exploding.
Yeah.
Should we tell people why I can see that?
The reason Kavi can see it is because he didn't know how to explain with words, so he explained with pictures that he wants to talk about things that explode in space today.
Yeah,
Well, I think
things that
that's
go
what he
bang.
meant.
Star
Things that
implode,
go
go boom.
bang. I try to respond by finding a similar GIF of the Klingon moon Praxis exploding in Star Trek 6 to Undiscovered Country. I could not find the GIF. There's videos of it. There's lots of videos of people trying to recreate it as part of their computer animation classes out there. But I can't find the GIF. Oh well. But
What?
that did become a question I was going to ask you a little later. As we're talking about
Oh,
things that explode in space.
have I spoiled the opening?
No, 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 no.
Okay, so we'll leave it as a
Well, let's start it fun.
teaser.
Let's start it fun. Let's start it
Okay,
fun. In Star
okay.
Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, the movie opens up with an explosion in space. That's the beginning. There's this big kaboom. It's a
Kaboom.
moon that explodes because of overmining or whatever nonsense story they come up with. But this is the question I'm coming to ask you.
Uh-oh.
The moon explodes, and
Mm-hmm.
gloriously so, and the shockwave extends outwards in a flat circular plane. It doesn't expand outwards in all possible three-dimensional directions. It's a two-dimensional type of shockwave that goes out there. Of course, it happens to be right in line with Sulu's spaceship, the Excelsior or whatever, and they
Mm-hmm.
run right into it. But is it possible for there to be an explosion in space in which the energy and the debris released from that explosion does not go out in all three dimensions? Instead, it goes out in a plane. The plane had a thickness to it, but it was a two-dimensional shockwave. Yeah.
It's a great question, and it's really funny that you're asking this because and people may be angry at me for having only watched this last night, but I finally watched the original Stargate movie,
Mm-hmm.
which, without having any spoilers, has a very similar explosion towards the end, where something there's an explosion contained within something, and when that explosion happens, you see like a general explosion, but then you see a kind of a planar shockwave extending
Yes.
um, from the center. And I think a lot of explosions in cinema in space tend to look somewhat like this. I I'm sure that there's a reason for why there is a preferential plane for the explosion. I think ultimately what physicists like to do a lot is to come up with a toy model, like the simple explanation for why something may be a particular way. And that toy model is generally symmetric in whatever frame that you're working in. So a lot of like the shock physics that we do calculations for supernovae will be like a one-dimensional simulation, assuming that everything happens in that sort of way as you move outwards, and then you can compare what's happening in that one-dimensional thing, like as a function of radius, to what would be happening in any direction spherically. I can hear in the background that your dog agrees with me. Obviously, well versed in shock physics.
Yes.
I would say that generally speaking, though, these toy models are kind of good to a point. Um, there there's been a lot of I don't want to say argument, but rather the rubber meets the road when physicists kind of try to update the toy models to make them more serious and more reflective of real physics and reality. And so, like a lot of the time, what you end up seeing are these asymmetries, like a preferential direction for a shock wave, depending on how the explosion happened. You have these breakout jets of material in some supernova explosions that basically preferentially break out in a really like collimated, like tightly beamed burst of energy in one direction. So I think the long story short is it's possible. It just depends on the particular setup.
Okay. I had
That was it.
another. I had another. I have a series of I have a little list of things that explode in space, but I also have a bunch of sci-fi things that explode in space, and you just kind of touched on one of those just now.
Oh yeah.
But let's stick with the real things.
No, I'm happy to go back and forth with sci-fi and real physics.
Fine. In Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope, the very first one, the planet Alderaan explodes. Later on, in Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star explodes, and also the first Death Star explodes in the first movie. But when these things explode, they explode outwards in
Hmm.
all three dimensions.
Yep.
But in some directions goes a larger, thicker, chunkier part of the debris. In some
Yep.
parts, it's not nearly as much. Some of it's sparkly, some of it's more cloudy, gassy, whatever. Um, is that more realistic to what you would expect in an explosion, a planet-sized explosion in space, or a star-sized explosion in space? That there's going to be some kind of clumpiness in random directions for whatever reasons? And does this harken back to the Big Bang, in which doesn't expand out evenly in every
Oh,
direction?
well, that's a whole other kettle of fish, the Big Bang.
All right, all right. Skipping the first explosion in space, let's move on to others.
uh, yeah, I think that going back to my previous answer, asymmetries are more realistic because there are very few perfect things in space. Like even Earth. I was at a talk the other day where somebody was telling me how radio astronomy is super useful for not just measuring things in space, but using the positions of things that we know in space to measure tectonic plates here on Earth. And so we can measure the precise shape of the surface or subsurface, I guess, of the Earth, under the water. And the shape that he put up on the screen, it wasn't a perfect sphere, and it wasn't even like an oblate sphere. It was this weird kind of like asymmetrical egg shaped thing. So it would make sense that even if you had an explosion that was perfectly centered at the core of a planet, if that planet is not symmetrical, you would have that explosion propagating outwards differently depending on the density or amount of material as it propagates
Mm-hmm.
outwards. And that's if it happens to explode in the exact center of the planet. if the explosion is happening somewhere else, it could, also have similar effects. Ultimately, this stuff is often, and the way that objects break is a really, it's really well modeled. Well, it's not well modeled by standard linear physics in some cases, and you have this area of research called non-linear physics, which you can imagine is the opposite somewhat. Is basically how certain processes dominate in explosive or breaking circumstances. If you've ever seen those videos about like how a strand of hard spaghetti will snap, right? It's not
Mhm.
always in the place that you expect it based on your intuition.
Right. I think
I hope that made sense.
it does make sense. And there was some documentary I saw about ancient Greek columns being made, and they were all built and sculpted horizontally before they were stood upright. And when they were all laid out, you couldn't lay them out, and they had to be laid up above the ground on like wood blocks. So they couldn't rest on the ground itself. If they rested on the ground itself, they would crack. If they rested on 2 blocks on either end or 3 blocks on either end, one in the middle, they would crack. It had to take more blocks than that, but it couldn't be a continuous touching all the way across. And that was enough to give it some flex here and there as it needed it. If it was too loose or too rigid to support, the column would crack. I thought that was very cool.
Very cool.
Let's talk about novae.
Novae.
Yeah.
Novae or supernovae?
Well, you got your micronovae, you got your regular novae, you got your supernovae, and you got your kilonovae, and the supernovae comes in 2 flavors.
Primarily 2 flavors, but yeah.
Type 1A and type 2. That's the one with chocolate. So let's start with micronovae and work our way up. A smaller, localized kaboom. What exactly does that mean? And are there a lot of those, or is that like a rare thing?
I'm not super familiar with micronovae, so I know that there are explosions of individual stars, or that's localized to an individual star that destroys the star or doesn't destroy the star. In my mind, at least, and maybe any other of my fellow astronomers listening may disagree or want to correct me, but a nova is one of those explosions on a star that doesn't destroy the star. It's kind of like the star for some reason becomes unstable, has this little explosion that settles back down. Whereas a supernovae will generally just destroy the star, right? So that's normally some sort of terrible collapse. The star is not stable anymore. It collapses under its own gravity, kind of implodes and then explodes. And then the type 1 or 2 will depend on like what the star was, what type of star, how massive it was, etc. A micronova, I imagine, is just kind of similar to a nova but smaller scale. So it's like on the surface of a star. Normally, novae happen on the surface of white dwarfs, which we spoke about white dwarfs last episode, I think, right?
I remember we've talked about them before. We have covered so much ground. I love it. I don't remember exactly.
It's too much information. Okay, so for people who don't remember, or if it's your first episode, hi, welcome.
Hi, welcome everybody.
Presents The Nerd and the Scientist. 15 minutes in.
By the way, that's who we are.
We are the Nerd and the Scientist. So if it's your first time here, take a star like our sun, which conveniently has 1 solar mass.
How lucky is that?
So lucky. Our star, the sun, basically exists in this really stable balance. This bit, I'm sure you know by now. I'm sure I've told you this spiel so many times, and sorry to listeners who are tired of hearing it, but you have this wonderful thing called hydrostatic equilibrium, or just consider it a balance of forces. You have gravity pulling all the weight in, and it's pulling in weight or mass of hydrogen, right? The stuff that is then fused together under that gravitational pressure, and then the force of that gravitational pressure produces nuclear fusion. Basically, there's so much pressure that ultimately what happens is that hydrogen atoms are fused together into helium atoms. And then the nuclear fusion in turn creates a force that pushes outwards, right? So you have the balance, nuclear forces pushing outwards, gravitational forces pulling inwards, right? So far, so good, yeah?
So far, so good.
Cool. This is how stars that live on the main sequence of stars live for billions of years, stably fusing hydrogen into helium. Now, eventually they run out of hydrogen, and then at their core they start fusing helium. They fuse the helium into heavier elements, and so on and so forth, until basically they run out of stuff. Now, when they run out of stuff, that is generally when they collapse. Now, if they were a really massive star, that collapse is going to be catastrophic or cataclysmic or whatever, adjective you
Whatever
want to
big
use.
fancy word. Yep.
Big fancy word to describe a big fancy explosion. So that collapse,
Kaboom.
kaboom, yeah, that collapse basically is a type 2 supernova or a core collapse supernova. If it's a massive star, it basically collapses in on itself and then explodes outwards, leaving behind only a neutron star or a black hole. If it's leaving a black hole, often we won't even see the explosion if there's too much mass because it's just too dense. But if it's a more low mass star, like our sun, what you end up with is a white dwarf, right? So basically, the star has collapsed, but it cannot completely collapse because it can be you can create this new force pushing against gravity, even though you don't have the nuclear force. You basically have this force created by a quantum effect where electrons don't want to sit on top of each other, and so they will push each other away, and that repelling force will kind of support this low mass star against total collapse. And so that's how white dwarfs are born. White dwarfs are basically the leftover bits of a sun-like star that's collapsed, and having collapsed, it's kind of it's not doing nuclear fusion anymore. It's this white hot ball of carbon mostly, and it will just simmer away the rest of its energy through like radiation, like heat radiation, just like a white hot coal over billions and billions of years. So that's a white dwarf. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Awesome. So, like I said, a white dwarf can only, it's not doing nuclear fusion, and it has like enough, or it has a small enough mass that this kind of like quirky quantum force thing of electrons not wanting to sit on top of each other is strong enough to prevent gravity from completely collapsing it. That is true until a mass limit, also called the Chandrasekhar mass limit, which I think we might have spoken about in the past.
Yes, we have.
Right? And that's basically 1.4 times the mass of our sun. So it's a theoretical prediction that has, I think, a fair amount of empirical evidence to support it, which is this idea that basically once there's more than 1.4 times the mass of our sun, the quantum electron force, whatever, will not be strong enough. No, not strong enough, exactly. And that's when you have a type 1a supernova, right? When there's so much more mass, or there's so much mass, rather, because of this additional mass that's come from somewhere. I'll plant a flag there. We'll come back to it, right? So even though, yes, flag planted, even though there was a small enough amount of mass that the star could kind of chill, become a white dwarf, and not collapse under gravity, eventually something has added more mass, and that has overwhelmed basically this electron force, star collapses, type 1a supernova. The reason why this happens is normally because the star, the white dwarf, is in a binary. It's got a friend, it's got a buddy, And if that buddy gets too close and it pulls material off it, um, it can basically upset the stable balance of quantum electron force and gravity. And this is basically an explanation for micronovae, novae, and type 1a supernovae. Because
Sure.
as material falls to the surface of the white dwarf, if there's a little bit, little explosion, micronovae. If there's a lot of it, big explosion, nova. And if there's too much and it's overwhelming and there's so much mass now on the star, that kind of explosion creates this kind of chain reaction of explosions that ultimately lead to the star basically um, imploding like a house of cards.
There's a white dwarf. In order for that to happen and take mass off of its neighbor to upset the balance and then explode, the neighbor would have to be a smaller mass, I would assume.
I believe that's correct. Yeah,
So it can't be a
I guess.
bigger star.
Could it be a?
I guess the question is
No, it
there's
could.
no there's no two-way trading of mass between a binary star. The bigger one's going or the more massive one's going to pull off of the less massive.
I take it back. No, maybe it is possible because I guess it would depend on whether it can pull like an outer layer of mass, right? So you have like red giant stars or stars that have like a puffy outer layer. That outer layer is relatively low mass and perhaps closer. So yeah, I guess it would be possible. I'm not an expert on stellar evolution, but I imagine that it's possible.
Okay.
Happy with that?
Huh?
We're happy
That's
with
good.
that. I've
All right. Let's okay. Well, give me a moment to preface this.
okay. Preface away.
In Superman 1 and Superman 2, or in the more modern Man of Steel, Krypton explodes, and the story kind of varies. It's
Yep.
either explodes because the they weren't very good stewards of their own home world, and
Mm-hmm.
they've hollowed it out and mined out all its minerals and resources, and there's not enough support left to hold itself up. Or another popular one is Krypton's sun or star uh, goes. It's a red star, and it goes, I guess, red giant. And as soon as the outer edge of the star reaches Krypton, Krypton explodes. So
Hmm.
when our star, our sun, goes red supergiant, it's going to swallow up the inner planets Mercury, Venus, us, maybe Mars. Um, will our planet explode once it comes into contact? Or will tidal forces rip it apart long before the sun actually reaches the Earth? Will we become like Krypton?
Um, yeah, this is a question I was thinking about as well recently, rewatching Smallville, because yeah, the explanations kind of vary. And it's like, oh, because of was it Jor-El,
Jor-El,
his
yes.
uncle? No, Jor-El's his
His
father.
dad.
It's his dad.
Oh my god.
Who's his uncle? I've forgotten. What's his uncle's name?
Oh,
Jeff
Peter
L.
O'Toole. Peter O'Toole. He was in
Peter
the
O'Toole.
Supergirl movie from the 80s. Peter O'Toole is the uncle. Whew. I
No,
remember.
um, whatever the name of Kara's dad is, right?
Fred L. Something like that.
Fred L. Yeah. So they suggest that Fred L's experiments were the reason why Krypton exploded. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So it is true that stars like the sun, and again, I should like tell people don't worry when I talk about like these things happening to stars like our sun, because we're talking about stuff that's going to be happening in billions of years from now.
Right.
Um, None of us will be around. I'm sorry if that
Yep.
puts you a little bit too in touch with your mortality, but humans don't live that long.
Yep.
And if you haven't learned anything on our show until now you know humans tend to
Yeah.
live for tens or hundreds of years. And when I say hundreds, I mean 100. Um,
1 point something.
1 point something. Chandrasekhar limit is probably good for 1.4
There you go.
times 100 is probably like the upper limit for human age. Um, so um, when these processes happen, they take billions of years, and yes, stars like our sun will, before they collapse into a white dwarf, they'll first expand into a red giant, which is basically you'll have the outer layer expanding, the outer layer of like the remaining hydrogen. And when this happens, you're right to say that like that layer will expand and move outward through the inner solar system. I don't think, at least from what I know, that will have any sort of catastrophic shock or energy effect that could cause a planet to explode. Rather, it would just change the temperature in a way that would not be pleasant. Um, so, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
my understanding of it. It would make a lot more sense that the explosion of Krypton was caused by some sort of extreme scenario of mining or wearing away of like the inner structure. Um, yeah, that's my best guess.
Okay.
Fred L, is that really what we're going with? We can't leave it there.
We can go with Mike.
Michael,
Miguel.
how about Pat?
I
No,
like it because it could be Miguel. All right. All right, Miguel. I don't know what I don't know what
yeah,
her dad's name is. It's too much.
I think it's Zor-El.
Is it Zor-El?
I
That
think
sounds very familiar.
Zor-El is Jor-El's younger brother. But we can go with Fred or Mike if you prefer.
When my son was born, we had a nice big naming. It was very good. We invited a lot of people, and it's great. And I got up on the stage and I gave Marlon Brando's Jor-El speech, word for word.
Nice. How many people figured out what you were doing?
Huh?
How many people in the audience knew that that's what you were doing?
Anybody who knows me knows exactly what I was doing. By the way, I love Superman more than a normal person should.
There's no correct amount.
Okay. What's another kind of explosion in space? Like a solar flare or coronal mass injection. Is that considered an explosion, or is that considered a series of events that revolve other things like magnetism and other things?
Ooh, you turned that from a good question into a great question right there, right at the end. Yeah. So the surface of the sun, or sun-like stars, is basically a super hot plasma, which you have electromagnetic forces that tend to dominate the way that the thing moves, rather than like just gravitational forces. Because it's like really strongly electrically charged, and what you can end up with is these kind of frozen in magnetic fields, right? So imagine like a strand of this plasma that has a magnetic field that you can kind of trace
Right.
along the strand. So um, when people talk about sunspots, those sunspots, they're kind of like dark spots on the sun, are often base points, or also called foot points, for like the bottom of a strand of plasma, like a magnetic strand of plasma. And so, generally speaking, these coronal mass ejection events happen when you have two of these foot points that kind of reconnect. So imagine you have some like coronal loop. Exactly. Yeah. So Benjamin's just drawing a loop with his finger in the air. So you have like a coronal loop, a loop of this plasma from one point on the surface of the sun to another point on the surface of the sun. And if those foot points join together, So those foot points will have opposite magnetic polarity, meaning they're kind of like a north and south on a bar magnet. When they join together, what you end up with is basically a disconnection. When they connect together, that kind of clump that was in the loop of plasma can get disconnected and ejected into space. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily view it, it's quite energetic, but I wouldn't view it as an explosion per se. Rather, like you said, it's this magnetic reconnection event that causes like a chunk of coronal material to get ejected from the surface of the sun. You appear to be muted, good sir. 1,000 apologies.
My bad.
He's back.
My back.
Mike L. Mike L is responsible for this.
Mike L. Next. So that's solar flare. I mean the coronal
mass
ejection.
ejection. Yeah.
They tend to just relocate from one part of the sun to the other, but sometimes we have solar flares that leave that little magnetic arc. Why does that happen? Just because the magnetic arc, the magnetism part of the arc tends to break down at the same point when the flare is going through, and then it just.
I think, yeah, we might be getting into territory that I'm not an expert on, and I'll definitely show
then
my.
just say it's because of the jelly beans, and we'll move
The
on.
jelly beans. No, the surface of the sun is a really dynamic and somewhat unstable thing, and so you'll have periods of, on this 11-year solar cycle, periods of more or less activity. And during the more active periods, I think it's still an open area of research to try to predict exactly where solar flares will come from. But I think there are regions on the sun where they are more prevalent during active periods, and then regions or periods where they're less prevalent. But yeah, wibbly wobbly magnetic plasma something 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 is probably the best answer I can provide.
I like wibbly wobbly. How about impact events? Those are explosions in space, but they're not really in space because they have to hit something. They have to kind of land, like Shoemaker Levy when it hit Jupiter, or the Tunguska event when we thought it was a comet, but no, it was an asteroid now, hit where, like Siberia or something.
What about them?
I mean, they're
are they
explosions in space. Just how big does it have to be before it causes damage in like a chain reaction of a larger explosion? Like, hey, this thing hit
Ooh.
Earth, and then Earth is going to be like, can't hold together.
Oh, I would need to do some back of the envelope calculations to even try to guesstimate that. But you basically, the more massive the object is, the more kinetic energy it will have when it impacts, right? So you could just do like a simple comparison of, the potential energy that it has, so how much mass it has, multiplying that by the gravitational acceleration that it has, and then you can convert that into a velocity, right?
Right.
So basically, even if you exclude the mass from it, you could just say, what is its gravitational potential? And then the higher the gravitational potential, the higher its kinetic energy can be when it loses that gravitational potential, when it kind of comes down to a height of 0 at the surface of whatever thing it's hitting.
Excellent. Which kind of leads into my question about the movie Armageddon from 1998.
Oh, God, I knew we'd get there.
Yeah, there's an asteroid, according to the movie, the size of Texas, and it's coming for us, and it's got an attitude and everything. As they filmed it, it looked like it was a very aggressive looking. But As the science lesson from the movie teaches us, if I can dignify it with such a term as a
Right.
science lesson, they
Sure.
had to dig a hole into it and put a nuclear bomb inside of it. And I love the movie use of send a nuke because the movie term send a nuke implies however powerful we need it for the storyline. Never mind, there's a variety of nuclear weapon
Just yeah, a
yields.
nuke.
But they send one that's perfect to to the asteroid, and they put it inside the asteroid, and from
Yep.
inside they're able to crack it perfectly in half. You get another one of those explosions we talked about with a nice little two-dimensional shockwave thing coming out of it as two halves diverge and miss us beautifully.
Perfectly.
Um,
Yep.
Aside from the fact that Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck went up there, does the theory of putting a nuclear weapon inside of an object as opposed to impacting it hold any water? Assuming that it's a mass of an asteroid, whatever it is, that's small enough, or the weapon is big enough,
It's
does it hold water?
it's such a strong maybe, like an aggressively strong maybe.
I love that.
Like yeah, one could argue if you okay, so there's a difference between if you have a rocket or some sort of projectile, um, there's a difference between the explosive power of its kinetic energy, like we are talking about before, right? Like the ballistic trajectory and the gravitational energy that it imparts, right? There's a difference between that energy from just like thing with energy or thing moving from a distance with velocity has now hit, and that is kinetic energy causing explosion. The difference between that and like the payload, the actual explosive fissile material, whether it's nuclear or it could be just like some other like TNT, whatever it is, right? So those two things would have a different amount of energy. And if you're just talking about like launching a missile into uh, an asteroid, you would have to think about whether the kinetic energy that it has is enough to penetrate the surface, right?
Right?
And then put the explosive material, which then has to be timed to explode later, um, will the kinetic energy be enough to place the explosive material deep enough inside such that you're not just like knocking off a chunk of the surface of the asteroid, but you're causing it to fragment in a significant way, in that break in half sort of way, as only movie physics can do so perfectly.
Good old movie
Um,
physics.
yeah. So I guess similarly, if the explosion is not timed to go off, like you have kinetic explosion as something hits the surface, or you don't even have that, but like you just have the nuclear explosion from something being placed on the surface. Um, what you may end up doing is, depending on the direction of motion, you just slow it down slightly, but it continues on its path. And then B, maybe like knock some material off the top half or the part where the explosive device was, but you're not necessarily going to fragment it in the same sort of way.
Yeah. And as we proved in a recent DART mission with Di- Dimorphos, was that the asteroid? Dimorphos, whatever?
I think so.
Something like
Oh, we
that.
knew this when we interviewed one of the Dart scientists,
Was that on the
Joe.
Space Case show?
Was that on the Space Case show? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, the cardinal sin of the nerd and the scientist is to forget which interviews we did
We should get her
on the
back.
old show.
We'll get her back.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, as Armageddon showed us, you need to send a explosive inside an asteroid and blow it up from within. But as real physics taught us recently, that's not entirely necessary because we launched just a very heavy projectile at a large
Yeah,
asteroid object, and we proved that just that impact alone can change its course. So
exactly.
we just need to scale it up, and of course, do a lot of math so you know exactly where to hit it or
Yep.
push it or whatever, and you
And
can
that's
just
what I mean by
nudge it.
like the direction of motion, right? You could
Right.
just launch a missile at it, and as long as you're not like, if it's coming straight towards Earth and you try to hit it in the exact opposite direction, you'll definitely slow it down, but
Mm-hmm.
you won't necessarily change its path because the most, the source of gravity pulling it will, the largest gravitational body in its neighborhood will still likely be Earth, so it'll eventually just like keep moving back towards Earth. So yeah, you're 100% right. The redirect mission, you have to think about trajectories in such a way that you can actually
Yeah.
change the course of the devastating asteroid.
Yeah. If you could detect the incoming object early, you don't have to deflect it that much, just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that will compound over time and just
Planetary
miss it.
defense, baby.
That's what I'm talking about. Planetary defense.
Big time. Big time.
Uh, is a magnetar an explosion, or is it just a long running ejection that just doesn't stop?
Uh, so a magnetar is right. So I said that in a core collapse supernova,
Mm-hmm.
you're left with a neutron star.
Yes.
So a neutron star. Oh, I might get in trouble for saying this, but a neutron star and a magnetar are basically the same thing. A magnetar is just tends to have a much stronger magnetic field.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
rapidly
wait to distill
rotating.
down a magnetar real fast. That's kind of lame. Okay. Gamma ray bursts.
Yes,
Similar to the
Gerbies.
magnetar or GRBs? Is that similar to a magnetar? Or is it more closely relatable to an explosion like a neutron star merger?
So so gamma ray bursts. There are two different types: short gamma ray bursts and long gamma ray bursts, depending on how many
Okay.
seconds they they last for. Um, Generally, the longer gamma ray bursts appear to be associated with core collapse supernovae, um, as like, or even in some cases, if it's like really massive, like I said before, and you go straight to a black hole, you don't even see the supernova. Sometimes you might see a gamma ray burst, which is, for people who don't know, if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum of all the wavelengths of light, gamma rays are the highest frequency or shortest wavelength, and they have the most energy. They're kind of one class up from X rays. Um, Short GRBs, I think they can come from merger events. Also, these kind of cataclysmic merger events of like, two neutron stars merging or colliding, or two black holes. I think, yeah, I think that they are definitely much more. I would put gamma ray bursts in the camp of explosive events. Um, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Black holes. When a star collapses in on itself,
Hmm.
it gets to a point where it either has enough mass to continue collapsing until it's a black hole, or it doesn't and it just explodes. Question is, when a star collapses on itself and it has enough mass to become a black hole, is there kind of an explosion that happens, or is it just goes off black?
Ooh,
And the only thing that's there is just an accretion disk that's just swirling it.
I think that if it's significantly, if it's like a hyper giant, super giant, whatever, that's like 30, 40, 50 times the mass of our sun, um, I'm pretty sure that when it collapses straight to a black hole.
And
Like,
there's no explosion. The explosion doesn't have time to escape it.
no, because the best, well, the simple explanation for why the explosion happens is right, you've burned heavier and heavier elements,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to the point where you're trying to burn iron, and iron can't be burned efficiently. So the central core, just before the collapse, is very, very rich in iron. It's basically entirely iron. And so when the star collapses, that dense iron and all of the other material forms this kind of like proto neutron star, the thing that's going to become the neutron star. And the material that collapses kind of um, simplistically, they kind of like ricochet or like bounce off that proto neutron star. And that's what causes the explosive part. There's also all sorts of things you can go into, and like how the majority of the energy from that process produces neutrinos, and the neutrinos are the thing that really drive the explosion. And it's only like 1% of the energy that actually creates the like blast wave.
Huh.
Um, but yeah, if it's not bouncing off the dense whatever it is, then all you would be kind of left with is like, if it's not bouncing, you just have the implosion. And if there's too much material, too much mass, it just goes straight to black hole.
That sounds so cool. That'd be
Wouldn't be
amazing to
fun
see.
to see from too close.
Yeah. But not like for the people on the planet Vulcan in the first of the Star Trek reboot movies when someone put a piece of red matter in the middle and somehow makes a black hole and it just consumed the planet until it was just nothing.
Yep,
That was
that's
good.
it.
That was good.
If only I knew what red matter was.
I'd make a killing, literally.
Oof. Apologies to any Vulcans listening.
Yeah, spoiler.
Woof.
Uh, speaking of spoilers, Battlefield Earth is a terrible movie, but I like sci-fi, so I'll watch anything. Anywho, at the end, spoiler alert, somehow a human with a nuclear bomb, again, just
Mhm.
something called a nuclear bomb. Nobody knows what kind it is or what its yield was, but just a bomb, gets teleported to the bad alien guy's homeworld.
Mhm.
And all we know is that it's a different planet. It's a little bit bigger
Sure.
than ours, and its air is purple. And so when the human who gets there detonates the nuclear bomb, because the atmosphere is different than ours, it sets off a chain reaction and it blows up the entire planet. The
Mhm.
question being is this: uh, isn't there a threshold to which all planets for a threshold of punishment that all planets have to be able to handle, regardless of their atmosphere and regardless of their mineral makeup, because things are going to impact them everywhere. Lightning's going to happen everywhere. Asteroids are going to happen, or
Okay.
meteors are going to happen everywhere. So, shouldn't a nuclear bomb that goes off here not really destroy another slightly bigger Earth-sized planet somewhere else?
Well, so
Ugh.
I haven't seen the movie.
Don't worry
Sorry.
about it. You've heard enough of it, and that you're good.
Yeah, sounds like a fun ride. Um, sorry, is the idea that the nuclear bomb ignites the atmosphere and then the planet physically explodes or implodes?
Yeah, pretty much. A single nuclear bomb. The premise of the movie, the the overarching idea of the movie is kind of cool. The execution on the writing and everything after that is miserable. But the what happens is a nuclear bomb is sent to the alien homeworld. What they came
Yeah.
to conquer us, we sent a bomb there, and it was just sent to blow up something, but it blew up the entire planet. Just
Hmm.
boom. And we don't know much about this other planet except that it's bigger and its air is purple.
So yeah, in terms of having an explosion that could ignite an atmosphere, depending on the explosion, depending on the atmosphere's composition and various chemistry, sure. you can ignite an atmosphere. This is actually something that I believe um, was a fear in the early nuclear testing that was done on Earth.
Right.
Um, I don't know enough about planetary science to say whether or not a cataclysmic event that like burns up an atmosphere could result in the rocky planet itself imploding or exploding. I don't think so. That's my intuition. But who knows? Again, with movie physics, maybe the nuclear explosions, the kinetic energy
Movie
produced by
physics.
the nuclear explosion also created a shockwave that destroyed the planet. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, sounds sus to me.
Okay.
Sorry, not to poo poo this wonderful franchise that you seem to love so dearly.
It's a terrible movie. It's just one movie. It was a book. I think it still is. And they made a movie. And what else can we talk about as far as explosions in space?
Well, um, what else can we talk about in terms of explosions in space?
Starfish Prime. You talk about Starfish Prime,
You what now?
which was a nuclear weapon test in space, just as a demonstration to see if it would work. And it horrifically did work. We were able to, back in the 60s, we
Yikes.
detonated a nuclear bomb in space just to test it and also to kind of show the Soviet Union, hey, look what we can do. But then it was immediately banned by everyone on the planet. Don't ever do this again.
Yeah. Not a great idea. There was oh there I won't be able to find it right now, but I can share it and after the episode maybe we can add it to the show notes. I'm pretty sure that there was a recent paper that went through archival astronomy observations, I think from the Palomar telescope in California, if I'm not mistaken, um, looking at like transients detected, right? Like explosive things in space that we think are coming from stars or distant galaxies, blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure that this recent paper found a surprisingly high correlation between those nuclear tests that were being done and the number of transients that they were detecting. And I think also that the one of the points that was raised in this paper was this idea that like some of these transients had been suspected to be UFOs or various like you know extraterrestrial visitations to Earth or something like that. Again, just caused by these nuclear tests. Um, but yeah, that's probably the extent of the connection in as far as I know.
It's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I like it. That's a nice question to end on. I like that.
All
I like
right.
yeah.
Whew. Couple random waiting dormant questions and quibbles before we take off.
Sure, let's. I love these testing out new questions and quibbles. All right, show me what you got.
Okay. All right. If you could magically be amazing at one lab technique, pipetting, coding, grant writing, whatever, what would it be?
Ooh, I feel like that's tricky because coding would have been my answer maybe a few years ago, and nowadays, um, most people in science, especially in astronomy, tend to use um, various LLM support tools to 10 or 100x their coding abilities. So, it used to be that I would spend hours, days, or even a week trying to figure out a bug in my code, and nowadays I can figure that out in about 2 minutes using something like Claude. Um, Claude, if you're listening, sponsor our show.
Please,
please.
Claude. Please, please, please.
um, I think the hardest thing. I think it can be very difficult to write. A lot of scientists have an issue with writing. I like to think I'm a decent writer. My background in high school was much more like humanities and writing focused, so I think I'm okay. Um, but for especially for scientists who don't have a strong writing background, it would be like, yeah, how do I put words on the page? How do I make those words good, and how do I make that coherent, and how do I do that whole process really quickly? um, People listening might be thinking, well, yeah, AI can do that as well. mm, Not really, not in a good way. I tend to not use AI for my writing at all. um, if we're talking about, yeah, like a genie wish for me personally, just I want funding. I want funding for science. I think there should be more funding for all science. That would be my, yeah, the magical ability that I get granted is to fund science. Yeah.
All right. What past scientist in your field does not get enough credit?
Past scientist in my field does not get enough.
Or any field? Why not? Is there a scientist out there that you would like to champion and get their name brought forward?
Ooh.
Get some recognition?
In our previous episode with Brian Scott, he made a fantastic recommendation for this.
Yes.
Um, I'm like nowhere. I mean, I can't think of an example as good as Emily du Châtelet, which Brian mentioned in the last episode. Um, I think I'll default to her. Yeah. I'm sorry if that's a bad answer, but
No, there's a bad
I'm kind
answer.
of blanking.
You're
Yeah.
raising
What
someone
about
up. I don't
what
really
about
have a
you?
scientist that I know
No.
of that needs, uh, being brought up. But we've covered a lot in our show that a lot of female scientists have done a lot of work
Hmm.
and made a lot of discoveries, and then someone else gathered their information and said, "Look what I found." And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing a big sweeping blanket of recognition for a lot of people. Jump cannon.
Yeah. Any jump cannon.
And jump cannon. Thank you. See?
Yeah. There are so many of these. I mean, like, God. Now, if you want to get me started, I feel like, obviously, Watson and Crick basically got the Nobel Prize for discovering Rosalind Franklin's notes. That was their big discovery. So Rosalind Franklin's an obvious one, but someone like um, the late Vera Rubin,
Mhm.
who the Vera Rubin Observatory is named after, basically, discovered dark matter. Um, didn't really get the recognition for it. Someone like Professor Dame Jocelyn Bell Burnell, who I had the privilege of seeing when she visited Sydney to get an honorary doctorate a couple of months ago, um, should have gotten the Nobel Prize for the discovery of pulsars, but didn't, because her supervisor, male supervisor, got it. Yeah, I guess like that would be the the blanket recognition. It's a good idea.
If
Yeah.
you can get a definitive answer to one big unknown right now, origin of life, dark matter, consciousness, what would it be?
Ooh,
Doesn't have to be
that's
one of those things. It could be anything that you need an answer to.
that's really tough. I think I would care less about the specific answer and more about the proliferation of that answer to the Earth's entire population. I think that is more, yeah, maybe that's like a, a trick answer to the question. I don't know if that's acceptable, but yeah, like any of those would do. You could even take so many things that we already know and just, what does it matter if I'm the only one who knows it, or me and my friends the only ones who know it? I think it's more important that that information is known and understood by the vast majority of the planet.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
I wouldn't mind knowing where the very first uh, life uh, originated from. Like specifically where it happened, like geographically, and exactly when, and maybe even if possible, see it, the very first living thing. I mean, we know more or less through fossil records and doing a lot of science. We can kind of go back and put the pieces together. But I think it would be kind of neat to actually see, if that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
that would be
That'd
cool.
be like, oh, that's it. There it is. That's the very first time some organism, or not even organism, some molecules self-replicate right there. Boom. Look at that. It made one.
Nice.
It made it. That's the first baby. Boom.
Oh,
All right, one more for
sounds good.
fun. Quick one, fun one.
All right,
What,
last one. Last one.
who's your favorite superhero?
Who's my favorite superhero? Uh, ooh.
Movies, comics, whatever it is.
Oh, that's really tough.
Hmm.
I don't know. Uh, I don't know. I'm struggling. I can't. I can't answer that. Oh, I can't. You can't make me choose.
Okay.
What about who's yours?
Superman, all day, every day. Superman. Thank you very much.
That's it. Good night.
That's a good night. That's who I like. That's my guy.
Oh man. For folks who have enjoyed this episode, let us know what topics you want us to cover or what guests you'd like us to include in future episodes. Folks can find me at Fun Fact Science on all the social medias. Benjamin, where can the good people find you and our other episodes?
Please go to Science Actually on Facebook is the big one. But also check us out on TikTok and on YouTube if you'd like to watch the show or see the short fun clips that we keep putting out there. And obviously, you're listening to us. If you're listening to us on the podcast, you know where to find us. We're everywhere podcasts are available.
Yep.
And please, 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 everybody, on whatever platform you're listening or observing or watching,
Say it
as your
together.
good friend Danny or Voma says, hit all the
All the
internet
like
buttons.
and subscribe buttons. All the buttons.
Hit them all. Like, share, rate, comment, all the buttons. Hit them
All of
all,
them.
except for the blocking ones. But
Not that one. Everything else.
hit all the buttons and tell your friends and tell them to hit the buttons.
Yep. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of Science Actually Presents The Nerd and the Scientist.
Later, everybody.